Hey guys, welcome back to the show. I know this review is way too late. I don't have very good excuses, but I do have them nonetheless. I am Steven, I'm your host here, and today we're talking about Final Fantasy VII Remake. And I'm sorry, okay, that it's taken me so long to get this review out. I wanted to take my time, make sure I got most of the game played through, and I made sure I didn't miss too many things, and really wanted to enjoy the game as much as I possibly could too, and I guess that's part of it too. I really wanted to enjoy the game. As I enjoyed the game, I realized how long the game really fucking is. There's about 40, 50 hours worth of content here, so with me working as much as I've been working, so I've been busy, okay? I haven't had time to finish it, so I think I finished up Final Fantasy VII right around the time of, beginning of July, and obviously there's been a lot of other stuff going on. Let's talk about Final Fantasy VII. Now, Final Fantasy VII, the original, came out in 1997. You know what else came out in 1997? Men in Black and The Lost World. Holy hell, I've gotten old. Mariah Carey and the Smashing Pumpkins were still relevant, and were really fucking big. And Princess Diana died in that tragic car crash. 1997 was a crazy year. I mean, I was too young to really remember, but now looking back at that, holy crap. Now, Final Fantasy VII is a game that I loved to death as a child. I mean, I didn't get it really until a couple years later. I had an original PlayStation thanks to my father, and I think, if I remember straight, I think I got it when I was about 9 years old. I got that Metal Gear Solid, and that's why those two are gold tier in my eyes of games. They still hold up really well with their stories, with their voice acting. Well, some of their voice acting. Metal Gear Solid had voice acting. Final Fantasy did not, but their writing overall, their everything, graphics, all kinds of stuff. So with the remake, I was intrigued to kind of see if it was going to hold up the same as the old game. In some ways it does, and in some ways it doesn't. And sometimes it does, but it also doesn't hold up well still. I'll explain it in a minute. Obviously the big thing that is noted here is the graphics. These graphics are jaw-dropping. And, and we'll talk more about another game that came out for PlayStation 4 here in a little bit, The Last of Us Part 2, when it comes to graphics. And, my god, I mean, the PlayStation 4, I feel like, sometimes is, I don't want to say it's underrated because really people talk about how great God of War looked and how great some of these other games have looked, but holy shit. The PS4 was really able to crank out some good-looking stuff as well as some really well-written stuff. And, I mean, that's just the recipe for success, right? I mean, that's why PlayStation dominated this generation. And here it's no different. The graphics are phenomenal. With dense cities and everything looking just so eye-popping. Whether it's, the upper city with its, clean look and its beautiful lights and tall buildings to the, the dirty, crusty underground where people are just scraping by and just, picking up anything they can off the ground and making their houses out of it. Everything just looks so good. Final Fantasy VII back in the day was considered beautiful, and honestly it was. It did something that was monumental for back in the day with the technology that it had. And, and Final Fantasy VII I feel like does take a huge step forward, with its graphics and showing that it can hold up for a long time to come. Even, if it's played on the PlayStation 5, I'm sure it's only going to continue getting better. And it's a smooth frame rate, and it's smooth gameplay. It's totally unbeatable in that regard alone. Just on graphics and frame rate alone, it would get a 10 out of 10. Some things are just dripping with so much detail, and and that's the big thing. I guess that's the huge thing with a lot of these games that have come out on PlayStation is that it's just details, little details bring out a bigger picture. Just little things that make it feel more realistic or make it seem like it's just something that you could dive right into, that you could just crawl right in the TV and have a ring moment, apparently, and get into these worlds, and it's amazing. The characters are wonderful. They're as wonderful as they ever were, but I love that obviously they're voice acted here, because back in the day, voice acting was something that was a thing, but not as many games did it, right? And Final Fantasy VII didn't. I don't remember it doing voice acting. I remember it just having the scroll of just words, right? And you press an A and having it scroll up and stuff. And so here having everything voice acted fully brings these characters more to life than ever before. The biggest issue really is that we didn't get a lot of deep characterization with this game. We got a little bit here and there, and I feel like the game does a great job of filling in things and doing more with the story and the lore than it did in the previous game. Because this game, like I said before, the 40 to 50 hours of content, really it's 40 50 hours of content that it took from the first 5 to 6 hours or so of content from the original and just stretched it to 40 50 hours. And in some ways that's really good, in some ways it's not as great, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But with this game in particular, I was hoping for a little more characterization, and it's like I said, in some ways it does, in some ways, and some of the early characters. But in some ways it's just fluff, and it's just giving us the characters, as there's supposed to be more chapters or sequels or whatever they're going to do later on, hopefully diving more into the characters, because really the characterization for a lot of the characters came, in the midway part of the game when everyone left Midgard. So we'll see as time goes on with the next entry how that works. I'm not going to really hold it too much against them, because like I said, I feel like they fleshed out some of the characters that didn't get a ton of fleshing out in the first, in the original game, because like I said, they were introduced to the beginning hours, and then you left Midgard and you really didn't see those characters in it again. And I feel like here they did a really good job of filling them out and filling out some of the characters too, obviously, that are with your main party too. But like I said, a lot of that characterization, a lot of those more personal quests come toward the middle of the original game. So we'll see moving forward, how they address a lot of that stuff. However, I do have to ask the question, were these characters always this thirsty? Because I was 7 years old when the game came out. I was 9 when I bought it. So I don't really remember as much of the sexual innuendos. But were they always there? Were they always this thirsty? Or am I just more thirsty now that I'm older? I don't know.
Okay, I get it. Mind letting me breathe?
Depends. Mind coming over tomorrow night? My roommates should all be out for a while.
Are you seriously that desperate?
Well? Come on, you know you're into this.
That's a question for the ages, I guess. But holy fuck. These characters want to fuck. Now here comes the biggest change, and this is the one that they really needed to nail to really sell people on the game more than anything, and that is the combat. Now obviously in the original 97, Final Fantasy was known for a turn-based combat, and it's actually kind of interesting. It's kind of funny how the evolutions happen. So with the Final Fantasy games early in the day, way back in the day, they had a turn-based style type of combat. And as the generations went on, and you got into 14, and now 15, and then of course now back to 7, they've changed the combat to be more like live-action type of game. Now obviously you still have meters that control, if you can do special actions or do certain things like use potions or use spells. And then obviously some of them will use 2 AP meters, and sometimes you've got material that'll give you more AP meters, so on and so forth. But really, this is where they could have gotten it wrong, and I actually feel like in most of the cases, they actually got it right. Now, Final Fantasy 15 really did take that more live-action combat, and I felt like they did a really good job with it. But with Final Fantasy 7, I feel like they evolved it, for sure. And, I mean, I have a couple gripes about it, but overall, I feel like it does the game justice. I feel like it goes ahead and it still is a really good combat system overall. And it's really fluid, it's really, solid, nothing lags behind, nothing. The biggest issue that you have is obviously the fact that while you're waiting for your AP meter to fill so you can do certain spells or to use potions, something like that. So let's say you're getting your ass kicked, and you have low health. You're just going to be running around in circles around the map, trying not to get hit again, as you are waiting for your meter to hit up so you can go ahead and use a spell. And I guess if I had a couple gripes, there's two. One is that you have this new dodge ability. So the dodge ability is supposed to work to make it to where your opponent can miss you at times. And sometimes it does work flawlessly. Whether it's some sort of beam attack or some sort of long-range attack. If you go ahead and dodge just right, if you go ahead and time it just perfectly, you're going to sit there and be able to dodge it pretty much most of the time. Now every once in a while they'll catch you, and that's fair. But the dodge when it comes to certain jump attacks, or certain, unblockable attacks, it doesn't matter if you dodge or not, you're still going to get hit, and it's not going to really do much of anything to really reduce the damage, which is fucking obnoxious. What's the point? You can't block certain attacks, and you can't dodge certain attacks, so you're just going to get fucked in the butt. That's what you're going to get. You're going to get fucked right in the ass. So yeah, so really there's just a couple of frustrating design decisions that feel like they're keeping some of the old, pieces kind of implemented in this new system. That the new system works just fine. You don't need to sit there and mix some of them old with the new. You can have it just new, and it'll be just fine. People aren't going to complain. Another really frustrating design decision too, obviously, with the combat system for me, and I know I was just praising it, so it's weird to hear some of these complaints, but they're minor complaints. They're just things I feel like can be tweaked or done a little bit better. They're not like overarching, just horrible design decisions that are super frustrating, that make it where I hate this fucking game. So I just want to make sure I get that out of the way. But another design decision that I felt was kind of and I didn't like, was that if you use a certain spell or if you use a certain potion but you get hit in the middle of your action, not only will you not go ahead and get you're not going to get the effects of that potion or that spell, but you're also going to use the MP, and you're going to use the potion or antidote or whatever it is that you're using. You're going to have these actions wasted, and it's super frustrating when you have, limited MP, or you have, limited amount of potions and they cost a fortune to fucking get, and you use them even when you're not technically using them, you know what I mean? And I don't remember if that was the same case in the original Final Fantasy VII, and if it was, I don't know why it carried over, and if it's not, I don't know why you implemented it. I just think it's silly, and like I said, it makes it more frustrating for this more live action, real-time type of, combat, than it would for just having a turn, for having like a turn-based type combat. So this is just my complaint. And the fact that there's really kind of a lack of a pause when you're using certain things. So like, let's say you're using a spell or using a potion, while you're trying to figure out who you're going to use to, things are still running. They're running in super slow motion. So like, if you time it out just right, obviously, you're not going to ever really have it screw you up or screw you over. But there are going to be certain times where there were a couple times where I got distracted, I'm not going to lie. I thought because everything was moving so slow, I thought it was kind of like paused in a way. And that's on me. That's on me. But still, instead of like pausing the combat, it's just like I said, it's moving really slow. So like I got distracted and I was, talking to somebody about something for a minute. And then I went back to look at the game and realized that the thing that I was targeting was in my face and getting ready to attack me. So when I had to get out and dodge out of the way. And so it's just, so lack of like a real pause in the game, whether it's like, using a spell or using, an antidote or a potion or anything like that, can be kind of frustrating. Now granted, everything moves really, really slow. But the fact that really, instead of it stopping time as you're trying to figure out your decisions, or you're trying to figure out, your best move forward, because it's supposed to be kind of like a real-time strategy thing. I get it, but at the same time, like, if you're trying to let me take a look at the whole map, then just pause everything. That's all. I don't know why you have to have everything keep moving anyways. It's just kind of silly, I guess. But on one other good note for combat, leveling and finding like weapons and items and stuff like that, it's more than plentiful. It happens more than often enough to feel like you're actually getting somewhere with things. As you continue to level, you also get points that you can dictate to your weapons. Now, I do like this design decision, and that was that they made it to where instead of you using your points on one weapon, you get points that you can use on all the weapons. So, for instance, if you have, you find a new weapon in the environment, right? Let's say you find a new sword for Cloud. You can go ahead and, you'll have all the previous points that you had, as well as, whatever points that you'll get for leveling up. And you don't have to take points or things from, other than material if you're switching things over, but that's still as easy as the switch of, I think, the triangle button, if I remember straight. And it makes it where, you don't feel like you're like, well, I want to put points in this sword, but then once, that sword outlasts its use, I want to go to this sword, and now I don't have anything. You'll always have action points of some sort that you can put into each of them and level these items up, and I think that's really cool. I think there's a really nice in-depth, menu that shows, okay, you can either raise, your attack on your sword, or your defense, or your magic ability, or whatever the case is. I think that's really great. Those are great things that I think that, like I said, really great design decisions. There's a decent amount of weapons, obviously, because this is technically only like the first 5 or 6 hours in the game. There's not a ton. right? So you've only got like 5 or 6 weapons or so. There might be like one other one that I didn't find for each one, but there's like 5 or 6 weapons for each character, and that's really about it. They do a good enough of a job of differentiating them, so that way like some of them do more like magic damage, and some of them do more like physical damage. So you can kind of play more according to your play style, rather than just going, well, this one's newer, so it's better, right? Which is kind of how it used to be, if I remember straight. But like I said, it's been so long, maybe that's actually, I might be wrong on that, to be honest with you. But some other games, I guess I should compare to, is like, you know, there are other games where like, oh, okay, well, I got a better weapon now, I get to toss that aside. No, you can keep those weapons. It doesn't take up, you know, any of your inventory, and like I said, they each do their own different thing, and they each have their own special attacks, and they each do, you know, something better than the other one does. And I think that's really cool, because like I said, it makes it where it differentiates your, you know, your play styles with your characters. So I think those are good things, and I'd like to see them continue being expanded and evolved on with whatever future entrees there are. It kind of has to go with graphics, but really I feel like it's a separate thing too. But world design is just so damn good in this game. So like I talked about how, you know, things look, you know, dirty, you know, when they were, you know, on the lower end of the plate, you know, things were like patched together with like whatever they could find on the fucking ground, you know, to make a house and stuff like that. There's so much there too, like there's like the depth with like how many like people will be in like certain buildings or facilities or like in the streets. Everything feels lively, and it's interesting, like, and it's interesting listening to some of the designers talk about how they went ahead and they had to scale back certain things because, you know, they were just populating these places so much and making it feel just so real. And it's cool, like, seeing how people interact with you and seeing them interact with things that are going on, you know, where they're talking about, you know, what's going on in the world. Hey, you know, there's another bombing, or hey, there's another this, or hey, listen to their conversations. The more good that you do in the world, the more they talk about you, and they say, hey, you know, what's up, Cloud, you know, and stuff like that. You know, there's some fun little secrets, there's some fun little side quests, there's some other little fun hidden goodies, you know, in different little parts of the world, but at times, some of the design can feel a little dated. So anyways, let's talk about the negative. So sometimes with the negative, so obviously I touched on some of the stuff like combat, but one of the big things is, even with the world design, even with like the things I talk about, like the hidden goodies, or using certain puzzles to find certain things, or, you know, and how alive they feel and how they look and stuff like that, in a way sometimes they can feel dated though too. And what do I mean by that? While the graphics and the sound design are like 2020, some of the world design can feel like it's stuck in 1997, where, you know, there's a lot of empty corridors, there's a lot of empty places that don't have hidden goodies. There's a lot of places that really, and I know this isn't the case, but it's a term, so I'm going to use it. Sometimes it feels like they're just sniffing their own farts. Yeah, it looks pretty, I get it, but what's the point of this particular thing here, you know? Whether it goes for a chance encounter, or it's to find a certain goodie, or maybe it's to find a different NPC. Like, it feels like more of the world could have been used in more thoughtful ways. You know, obviously a big example of that, and I know probably most designers are tired of fucking hearing it, but like something like Witcher 3. But even if you're tired of hearing Witcher 3, Skyrim is another great example too, where things feel alive. Now, there are things that do feel alive in Final Fantasy VII. There are, like I said, it's very populated streets. You know, you get to see, you know, kids and animals and people interacting with one another, and stuff that's going on in the world in real time. However, when it comes to certain quests, or when it comes to certain things, it doesn't feel as lively. It doesn't feel as organic, I guess, if that makes any sense. And some of the side quests really are boring. Like, I knew a few of them weren't going to be great. I get that, you know. That's how it is in every game. Even in The Witcher 3, some of the early side quests weren't all that great, but as the game progressed, they started telling their own unique stories, or they started, you know, adding more to the overarching story. You know, and it all came together and it was beautiful. And Skyrim did the same thing. A lot of the side quests were better than the main story. And here, some of the side quests are entertaining or fun or fairly well written, but a lot of them were boring. They weren't as bad as like Odyssey, like fetching 20 sticks for this old fucking lady, but it's enough to make you want to beat your head against the wall. It wasn't as nearly as intriguing, and it just made me want to get back to the main story. And in this time, in this day and age, and you have this opportunity to completely rehaul something, probably should look at rehauling a handful of your side quests. I like a lot of what you do with the main quests. I like a lot of what you did with, some of the world and game design. However, there are some things that could be improved upon. And this is definitely one of them. Like I said, this feeling of like I said, there's some things that just don't feel rewarding enough. There's some things that lead to nothing. And there are some side quests that are just fucking boring. And I feel like it could be done better. And I feel like you guys have more than enough talent to make it better. And honestly, really the last thing I need to touch on is I feel like not understanding what is going to happen next. Now, it could be that Final Fantasy decides to take I think it was 13, Final Fantasy 13 that took the route of it had 1, 2, and 3 or whatever, parts 1, 2, and 3 or however they split it up, whatever. You know what I'm talking about. Or maybe it was 12. I don't remember which one it was. Bear with me, I'm not a huge Final Fantasy game. I haven't played all the Final Fantasies. I've played a handful of them, but not all of them. Alright? They haven't really touched on exactly what they're going to do. If they're going to make separate games like that, or if they're going to do expansions, or what the fuck, right? And I've seen some people hint at the fact that, they'll wait till Unreal Engine 5 comes out, and then they'll probably, push everything onto that, because the developers have talked about how with Unreal Engine 4, if you go to Unreal Engine 5, you can just upload everything there, and it just automatically touches everything up. You don't really have to do anything. It's an easy process, blah, blah, blah. And so they might wind up doing that. The game might not come out for 2 years, not till 2022. And then if that's the case, is it coming out on PlayStation 5 then? So I guess that's the thing, is I'm confused about how many parts of this are we going to get? Because I've seen some of the head honchos, some of the big, directors, the developers, and stuff like that, talk about how now that we've gotten, we figured out exactly how we want to do certain things, and do this, do that, yada yada, that we have more experience with the engine, so on and so forth, that we can make, other parts, but they won't be as long, right? So they're not going to be 40 hours long. They'll be 15, 16 hours long, or they'll be 10 hours long. Well, I guess I shouldn't say that. They didn't actually specifically say how long they'd be. They said it'd be the length of a game, which, what the fuck does that mean? And if you're going to do it like that, you're going to make them, full-length games. Are you going to sell them like full-length games? Are you going to sell them, at half off? How much is this going to be? How much is it going to cost us to sit there and get the full Final Fantasy experience? And how long is it going to take for you to get it to that? Right? They started working on whatever the next part is, they said, back in November, I think it was, in an interview. But it's just, I don't know, haven't really answered really well. They've tiptoed and danced around to the point where people are filling in the blanks for them more than anything. And I don't know what their plan is going forward, and they haven't been clear about it. They've been really mum about it. And I get it, with Corona going on, and and also the shit where people are working more from home than they are in the office. I get it. You've got a lot of things in the way right now, right? But at the same time, I feel like there should be more of a clear-cut path. You don't have to give me a date. You don't have to be well, it's going to come out August, 2022, Steven. I just need some kind of verification that you're not just going to add on to the Final Fantasy game we got. You want to make other ones, and if you're going to make other ones, if you're not going to make them 40 hours long, that's fine. But how long are you going to make them? And are you going to sit there and carry over the stuff that we've done? Are you going to, carry over decisions that we did? Or are you going to carry over this? Or are you going to carry over that? How's it all going to work? These are questions that aren't getting asked enough. And I feel like these need to be answered. Otherwise, really, the final grade's going to have an asterisk on it. Because if I'm going to go just buy this game alone, then fine. But obviously, Final Fantasy VII story isn't done yet. It's, like I said, the first 4 or 5, 6 hours of the game. And there's I think that game was originally 30, 40 hours, and it was 3 discs long. So how long is this game going to be? Like I said, I feel like as a fan, we should get those answers. Let me wrap this thing up real quick. I've been talking about it enough, I feel like. Distracted enough by the dogs. If you've noticed, there's been a few more extra cuts and stuff like that, and I kind of seem to lose my place. It's because they decided to start barking. Apologize. But let's wrap this up. My final grade for Final Fantasy VII Remake is an 8 out of 10. I know, it's not a 10 out of 10, it's not a 9 out of 10. And there is an asterisk by it because, like I said, I need to know what we're getting later on. We deserve to know what we're getting later on before I can really adjust that grade accordingly. Like I said, I get it, it's the introductory, thing. In some ways, I feel like they evolved the game in meaningful ways, and in some ways, I feel like it's still kind of stuck in 1997. Alright? I feel like certain decisions and certain things that they did were really, really good. You know, whether it was certain, like, world design or certain, you know, obviously the graphics, sound design's fantastic. I didn't even touch on that, you know, from being able to find records with, like, old school music on there and certain things like that. You know, the battle music, you know, even, like, little, Easter eggs, like having Barrett go ahead and hum the original Victory theme song. Those types of things are fantastic, and that's what brings a lot of charm and love to the game. You know, the characters are enough to carry it, even when there are some things that are lacking in it. Like, you know, meaningful side quests, or the fact that there's a lot, sometimes it can be a walking fucking simulator where you do a lot of slow walking down this and climb up that and do that, and it pads it. So really, the game's 40, 50 hours long, and it could have probably been 30 to 40 hours long, really. I feel like they could have padded a little bit less, and they could have gotten it out to us a little earlier. But that's neither here nor there. Now, like I said, obviously, we still don't know what's going on with their sequels or their parts or their expansions or whatever the fuck it is that they're doing. So there's a lot of stuff that I feel like can be improved on and can be continued to evolve to make those further parts or expansions or whatever the hell they are better. But only time will tell, obviously, if they wind up taking any of that advice or taking any of those ideas. So we'll see. But until then, guys, I'm still working on The Last of Us Part 2 review. I've got the game done. I finished the game weeks ago. Just haven't had time to talk about it with, like I said, I mentioned in the Ubisoft's History of Abuse video, I worked on many days, and so between me taking a little personal time and, you know, me trying to enjoy my birthday off and all this other stuff, I haven't had a lot of time to make these videos. But I did finish the games, and I have been writing scripts for them, so talk more about those then. But hopefully I'll be able to get those out to you soon, that review soon, and then I'm also working on a Ghost of Tsushima video as well, and that one's actually going to be a lot of fun. I think you guys are going to really enjoy that video, so stay tuned for that. That should hopefully be arriving in the next few weeks. So, but until then, I will see you guys in the next On The Shelf. Bye, guys.